Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Bean here, and today I'm coming at you really excited actually because earlier this week actually Callie and our channel was tagged in a book tag by Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. This is for the Get to Know the Fantasy Reader book tag. Now this is going to be my take on it. As you may know, Callie and I do read different books, and so because of this we will be doing the tag for each of us. So I'll be doing this one and then Callie will do her own as well. Because we do read different types of fantasy books. I had the misfortune of looking at what I've read so far this year and realizing I have hardly read any fantasy books in 2022. Like, who am I? What happened? I'm actually reading a lot of mystery and thrillers this year. So apparently that is where my head is this year. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I like it. And just looking at all of these books, I would like to get back into reading my fantasy. Also, the cat has been running around the house today. If you hear her, that's why. She is a ball of energy today. I'm not sure what is happening, but she's been very energetic the past couple days, so. Yeah, you. So, let's just get started. How about that? There are technically 10 questions to this tag, and so let's start with number 1. What is your fantasy origin story? Basically, what kind of books got you into fantasy? Now, I actually have a couple of the books that got me into reading fantasy, and there's 3 of them. The first one is a little bit obvious and one that I could not skip over if I wanted to, and that is Harry Potter. I am a 90s child, so I grew up with these books. These books came out while I was in school. The first one, I believe I was in 3rd grade when it first came out. So it was one of those that I grew up with this series quite literally. So I had that unique perspective that a lot of people my age actually have, where we grew up reading the books with Harry, growing up with him as he's going through all this stuff. So these books made a lot of sense to us because we were the exact age that these books were written for as they were being written. Like, I was in high school when the last one came out, and it was epic in high school. So if you don't know anything about Harry Potter follows a boy named Harry Potter who is told at the age of 11 that he is a wizard, and he is taken to this wizarding world and basically thrust into a world that he was taken out of as an infant after his parents were brutally murdered. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever actually had to explain the synopsis of Harry Potter. Huh. But this is definitely a book that got me on the trail of reading some fantasy. Along with that one, I can't ignore another series that I know I read with my dad. And I don't have it in English right now because I believe it's actually at my parents' house, but that's The Magician's Nephew, so The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series by C.S. Lewis. I know it's slightly controversial, but I loved these books. They were so interesting. There was so much magic in them. I absolutely loved them. So I can't not bring this series up because this was a big factor in my childhood. Along those lines, I actually have a 4th one that I completely forgot about. I also grew up reading The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, so that's another series that, again, I grew up reading these books, so. But the biggest one I would have to say would be in 5th grade when we read Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce in a book club I was in, and that really got me into reading books continuously and reading them for enjoyment. For those of you who don't know, Wild Magic follows Dane Sarasari, who is a practitioner of wild magic, meaning she can commune with animals. It is a very rare magic that has hardly ever existed, and no one really knows where it came from. She is running away from her home because her home was attacked and her family killed by bandits. And she stumbles upon a fair where she runs into a trader named Anua, who takes her basically to the palace, and her life starts there, and she starts learning about her magic and learning about court and learning about life there. And finding her place in the world. And it's such a great series. I absolutely love this one. It's not for everyone. It is very 90s, but I love it, and I do try and go back and reread it every year or every couple of years. So there is a lot of books. There are a lot of books written by Tamora Pierce in this world. And I'm impatiently waiting for one more, but highly recommend this one, honestly, to start. This one or the Alana series are the best places to start. That was question number 1. This could be a really long video. Question number 2. If you could be a hero in a story, who would be the author, and what trope would you insist on? Oh, that's a good question. I really like that one. I think that the author I would insist on would be Genevieve Cogman, who wrote the Invisible Library series. Just because I absolutely love her writing style. It does take me a little while to read it because it isn't super fast-paced, but I don't think my life is super fast-paced either, so I think that would match up quite nicely. And as far as a trope, I think I'd have to go with like a magical career trope where you have the two different worlds, basically, one that has magic, one that has not, and I'd love to be one of the people that goes between the worlds, talking to, like, being an intermediary between the two worlds. I think that would be so much fun and such an interesting way of living my life. So, for those of you who don't know, The Invisible Library is a 9-book series, 8 or 9, I think. 9-book series so far. 8 books are out, 9 come out the 9th one comes out this year, I want to say. That follows Irene, who is a librarian at the Invisible Library, which is an interdimensional library that allows her to travel to different dimensions, different versions of our world, collecting artifacts in order to preserve history. And I want this job, so you could say this is a little bit sci-fi, but there are dragons, there is magic, so I'm counting it as sci-fi. Or I'm counting this as fantasy. Question number 3. What is a fantasy book you've read this year that you want other people to read? Okay, this one is pushing it a little bit because, again, I've read like 3 fantasy books this year, which I'm wrapping my head around, and I don't really like that fact. But one that I'm going to say is a fantasy book for now is going to be The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. This follows Jamie Gray, who is a down-on-his-luck young adult who basically has lost his job due to COVID and terrible managers. And he is working as a food delivery driver when he delivers to an old high school friend of his who invites him to work a job basically caring for large animals. In case you can't figure it out, the large animal are kaiju. And it's kind of an interdimensional travel. Again, I seem to have a thing for interdimensional travel. And he ends up taking care of kaiju for 6 months out of the year, and it's basically just a series of errors of what happens, and I think it's absolutely adorable. It was a great read, really quick, really funny, but I highly recommend this book. It is so much fun. And honestly, I don't see enough people having read this book, and I think everyone needs to read it. Alright, next question, question number 4. What is your favorite fantasy subgenre, and what is one that you haven't read much from? There's 2 favorites that I have. The first one being high fantasy. Obviously, high fantasy, dragons, lots of magic, adventures, quests, stuff like that. And I'm actually going to use Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss as an example. Name of the Wind follows Kvothe, who is currently an innkeeper, and he is telling his story of how he became one of the most powerful sorcerers, magicians, whatever you want to call it, artificers, I believe is the technical term in this series, in history. And each book, there's 3 books in the series, 3rd one's not out yet, Patrick Rothfuss, please, what's happening? I need to know. I'm not mad, I just want to know what's happening. Each book is 1 day of him telling this story, and it's so good. It's so well done, and I'm currently rereading it. I love it. It's so good. The other subgenre that I read actually a solid amount of is urban fantasy, and I'm going to use The Voodoo Killings by Christy Cherish as an example for this. Voodoo Killings, So urban fantasy is kind of like magic, but in a city setting, in like a modern setting where just a couple people have magic. This can also be like something by like Patricia Briggs or something of that sort, where there's magic. Not everybody knows about it, but it is there, and it is a part of civilization at this point. But otherwise, like, cell phones are the same, we have computers, we have the same types of normal, everyday, contemporary, our world sort of things. So basically, magic in our world. This follows... what's her name? It's been forever since I've read this. This follows Kincaid Strange, who is a voodoo practitioner. And she gets blamed for a murder, and so she ends up having to figure out who did it. So it's very good. It's a good series. It is interesting. I honestly really love I honestly love Christy Cherish's way of writing. It is slight romance, but there isn't a lot of romance in there, so that's always the thing. Alright, and as far as a subgenre I don't read a lot of, I'm going to go with fantasy romance. Honestly, if you know me, you've been on this channel for a while, I don't read a lot of romance, just in general. I am changing that because I've kind of had my eyes open to a lot of different types of romance, but I'm going to hold up Jennifer L. Armentrout, The White Hot Kiss, as an example. I have not read this one yet. I read Storm and Fury, which is the follow-up series. But fantasy romance is a fantasy book, kind of, usually I suppose high fantasy, but with an emphasis on the romance. I prefer books that are more emphasis on the magic, because I find magic fascinating. So, I guess, yeah, that one. Question number 5. Who is one of your auto-buy fantasy authors? Auto-buy fantasy author. I'm cheating a little bit, but I'm going to go back to a book that I already showed you, and I'm going to go with Tamora Pierce. I have a little shrine to Tamora Pierce on top of one of my bookshelves. She has been one of my favorite authors, and the world of Tortall, the world that these books take place in, really built up my understanding of fantasy and the genre. I'm waiting for one book from her. She started a duology a couple years ago, and we haven't gotten the second one, and I'm kind of upset about it. And I hope she's okay. I haven't heard anything, but I'd really like the second one. Yeah. So, but I would have to say Tamora Pierce is an auto-buy author for me. I will buy and read just about anything she writes. I also put everything by Genevieve Cogman. I pre-ordered all of her stuff right now. So, as far as fantasy authors, those are my 2 auto-buys. Question number 6. How do you typically find fantasy recommendations? Alright, so I actually do this a little bit strangely. It's a mixture of different things of how I get my recommendations. Part of it is BookTube. I watch a lot of BookTube. I really do. It's probably one of the reasons I don't read as much as I could. I get a lot of recommendations through BookTube. I would also go with the library. I work at a library. Hi, hello. And I see a lot of books come through, and I do read the dust jackets of a lot of them if they intrigue me, or the idea, or if I've heard of them before. A little bit on Book Talk, not much, honestly. I haven't stumbled my way into the fantasy Book Talk area yet. I'm not super active on Book Talk. But honestly, the #1 way for me to find fantasy and sci-fi reads is I go to Barnes & Noble, or I go to Half Price Books or a bookstore, and I browse. And I just look at books that strike me as interesting, and I note them down. I go through the shelves, and I go through them very slowly, and I go through, like, I wonder what this is. This looks like it's a full series. This one's got 2 books. This one's a standalone, this kind of thing. So I actually will go through the shelves and just browse. So I have found a lot of different authors actually that way, which is very funny to me. But it has worked out, honestly. I've found some really great authors that way. That's how I came across some of my love for horror even, and for the sci-fi genre, is by just browsing. Just looking at them and seeing what's out there, because there's a lot out there, guys. There's so much out there, so much that isn't covered on Book Talk and BookTube, and I would love to go through some of those books sometime. And I just wish I had time to read all of those, without also having to read all the popular books as well. But such is life. Question number 7. Upcoming fantasy release you're excited about. Alright, I'm actually gonna go really... I after that last question and saying I don't want to read the popular ones, I'm gonna go with the popular release, and that's Babel by R.F. Kuang. I actually was just approved for an e-arc version of this book, so I'm hoping to read that really, really soon. It's long. It's a long book, but I am so excited about this. This is a dark academia, I believe. It takes place at Harvard, and it's all about a magical place of languages, and oh my god, guys, I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this. So yes, I don't know a lot more about it because I'm trying to go in blind, go in without knowing a lot, but I'm so excited about this one. Question number 8. I like this question. What is one misconception about fantasy you'd like to lay to rest? When it comes to the fantasy genre, a lot of people assume you need to already know about magic. You need to know what's happening, you need to know background information, and you need to be willing to dive into a world that's completely different. That's not true. You don't have to. I've got several examples here of fantasy stories that take place in our world, so you don't have to dive into a brand new world. You don't have to go the Lord of the Rings route. You don't have to discover a brand new world that is nothing like our own, that has different species, that has different creatures depending on where you're at. You don't have to do that. Can you? Oh yeah, and we can recommend series up the wazoo of that type of stuff, but you don't have to. Question number 9. If someone you know that doesn't read a lot of fantasy asks for a recommendation, what are the first 3 books that come to mind? I have 4, because I'm extra. The first one I'm going to recommend is recommend The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. This is technically a children's book, yes, but so is The Hobbit, which I'm also recommending. But these books are great for building a foundation of understanding how the fantasy genre works. So this book follows Lyra, and it's in a world that's similar to our own, but there's a bit more steampunk in it, if I recall correctly. It's been years since I've read this book. I do need to reread it. And each person has a familiar. They have a little daemon, I believe is what they call it. And that daemon takes the form of an animal that most represents your soul. So your daemon is basically your soul. And Lyra basically stumbles onto a plot to overthrow the government, and it gets really, really wild and crazy. There's talking polar bears, there's a whole bunch of talking animals, and she goes on this adventure to try and save her friends and her father, and it's so well done. I need to reread it to refresh myself about what it's about exactly, but highly recommend this one. It's also easy to get through. The next book that I'm going to recommend is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is a completed trilogy. It is high fantasy, but it starts off in the city of Cairo and then ends up in a fantastical city of Daevabad. Daevabad? I believe that's how you say it. But this follows our main character, Neri, who discovers that she has a unique type of power. And there's Jinn in this story, there's magic, and it's just so very well done. Don't come at me, I haven't finished the trilogy yet. I'm rereading this one hopefully this year, and I will finish the last 2. These books are also some of the most gorgeous books I have seen, and I also have found out there's a series of short stories that's coming out as well, so I'm very excited for all of this. The next book I am recommending is actually a duology, and that is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This is also based in the real world, but this one follows 2 different perspectives of Kate and August. Kate basically just wants her father's attention, only to realize her father might not be the best person in the world, and so she's not doing good things. And August is actually a demon who, when he plays his violin, he can kill somebody. And it's basically a story of the 2 of them trying to figure out how they actually want to live their lives and discovering themselves in the face of magic. And I think this is a very well done book. I think this is very interesting. The duology was heartbreaking and wonderful at the same time. Highly recommend. Honestly, I recommend anything by V.E. Schwab. This is probably just her most approachable series in the fantasy genre. And the last series that I recommend, yes, it is a series, I know, sorry, is a trilogy completed again by Julie Kagawa, and that is Shadow of the Fox. The reason I'm recommending this book, this one involves kitsune and Japanese mythology. The reason I'm recommending this one, mainly, is for my fellow otaku out there, because this reads like an anime. This honestly reads like an anime, and the entire time I was reading this book, all I could think of, I imagined all the characters in anime style. It's one that's hard for me not to recommend, just because if you've watched anime, you've read any anime, even if it's not the high fantasy stuff, this is one that's going to vibe with the way that you think about stories. So this is one of the main reasons I recommend this one. This follows a girl named Yumeko who has kitsune powers of sorts, who is tasked with guarding an ancient scroll from the Great Dragon. And when her temple is burnt to the ground, she is sent on a mission that she does not want to go on in order to save the world. And she ends up meeting a disgruntled samurai and an assassin along the way, and the three of them have to work together in order to save the world, and it's so well done, it is beautiful, and I highly recommend it. Question number 10. Who is the most recent fantasy reading content creator that you want to shout out? I don't know. I will post them below, and you'll all receive the notifications, but if I come up with them sooner, I will put pictures up here. I kind of jump around as far as booktube goes, so I'll have to do a little bit more digging on who's actually fantasy versus not. But yeah, so that's what I got for you guys here today. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a lot of fun, although I think I blabbed on a little bit because I'm pretty sure this recording's over 25 minutes long. So we'll see what happens. But that's what I got for you guys today. If you did enjoy this video, please hit the thumbs up and feel free to subscribe down below. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and the occasional Sunday, and if you want to be reminded when we post these videos, hit the little bell icon down below. Until next time, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep reading. Bye!